Okay.
Yes.
Where is this? Is
German. My dad's German.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to spell it
Oh,
correctly.
yeah. Literally Batdorf. Crazy.
Alex,
Thank you.
that's yours.
Thank you.
Bueno, ¿me escuchan? Perfecto. Muy bien, pues muchísimas gracias a todas y a todos. Gracias por estar aquí. Más les vale porque es clase. Y bueno, sin más preámbulo, quiero agradecerles porque es la primer clase del trimestre y tenemos una invitada de lujo. Ya van a escuchar de ella, la historia y sobre todo las empresas que ha creado. ¿Va? Muy bien. Quiero presentarles a Alex Batdorf. Por favor, un fuerte aplauso para ella. Alex, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And well, I want to start with, can you tell us your story, please?
Yes. Okay. How much? We have 30 minutes?
30 minutes, if you want to do it more or less.
No. I'd rather you all ask me
You're
questions.
in the Universidad de la Libertad, so don't worry about it.
Okay. So I'm Alex Batdorf. I'll take it back. So I am on my third company now, and I started my first company when I was your age. So I was 19. But before that, because I do think that when we talk about entrepreneurship, a lot of people talk about you just work really, really hard without talking about where you come from, who raised you. All of those things very much matter. And it's not necessarily about money, even though that helps a lot. I did not come from money. But I think who is telling you what you can accomplish in life does shape you a lot. So I'm from the U.S., from Seattle. My mother is African American, and my dad is German and Russian. And so what kind of shaped the way I thought about myself in the world and what I could accomplish was having two parents that said I could do anything I wanted. Not because I was a girl or not a girl or because I was black or whatever, but also context matters. I have a father that society looks at as a white man. They look at him and say, well, he's the top of the food chain, he's the most important. Not saying that's true. It's saying that that's how society treats him, right? And so as a kid, I'm looking at this guy that people see in high regard, and he's telling me, you're the most amazing thing, you can do whatever you want. And so my idea in life about myself, having both of my parents say, you can do whatever you want. So I was like, I absolutely can do whatever I want. So that's what shaped how I showed up and how I got into business. So fast forward, I get into college. I worked really hard in high school. I think my last 2 years of high school, I was in the computer lab every lunch period, just applying for scholarships in colleges. And so by the time I got out of high school, I had full rides I got accepted into one of the top schools in the world, University of Chicago, and mostly on a full ride because I just applied to a ton of scholarships. And giving a little bit of context of the time, so I'm 35 now, but when I got into school, it was 2008. It was one of the worst economic recessions for the US. And so that shaped a lot of my experience. And right before that, and I think timing matters in entrepreneurship. People are like, I'm gonna build the next Uber. I'm like, you're not gonna build the next Uber because the timing is not right. That was the timing for Uber. So I got into school in 2008, and then the year before, the iPhone came out, and that means the App Store. So there was less saturation in the market, so more apps could get onto the store. So when I get into school, all of my classmates, we're looking at all of our, classmates who had graduated, and everyone's telling us, if you go to some fancy school and get a fancy degree, you are gonna be safe and you will have the best career. Absolutely not. You can have a degree from a nice school, in the top schools. I went to one of the top schools, and I saw these people coming out of school, paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, US dollars, and did not have jobs. So my classmates, we looked at ourselves and we were like, we have to figure out how we're gonna have a job for ourselves. And that's why you saw a lot of people that were my year. We, at my college, actually, we started the entrepreneurial ecosystem at our school. Now there's like a fund and everything. But the way it started for us was one of my best friends at the time, who was also my roommate, she's from Puerto Rico, and we used to love going to thrift stores. So now you'll hear it's like, secondhand shopping, resale. And I actually learned how to do this from a family friend of mine, or my family's. She is a very successful business owner back in Seattle. And I remember in high school, going to and getting secondhand thrifting clothing was seen as not cool. You were seen as poor if you did that. And I remember I went to her house, has a very fancy house, very successful, and she was showing me these clothes one day. And I'm just like, oh my God, where did you get it? And she was like, in the US, it's called Goodwill. And I was like, why would you shop there? You have all this money. And she was like, how do you think I keep my money? And she's shopping at these places, and she's like, you can get really nice items that are used, but you're not paying a lot of money, and you're not looking like everybody else, because when you go to a store, you go shop in these stores, you're just choosing from what everybody else has. And I remember I left her house that day, I went to a thrift store, and it changed my mind. Especially as a high school student who is we're all pretty impressionable, and we want to fit in, we want to be cool or whatever. And so I just remember I was a very creative kid, so it felt like it was a canvas for me. So I started thrifting from there. That turned into me thrifting in college. I introduced it to my roommate and best friend at the time. And girls on campus kept coming up to us, and they were saying, where are you guys getting your clothes from? You always look so chic, and you must be like spending so much money on it. Little did they know, we were both poor as hell. We could not even afford our books, but we were like, we're gonna spend our $10 that we do have on these clothes that like we could get exactly. We love that. The $2 on jeans, or I remember I got like a top from Dior, like that's a Dior top for like $10, which will never happen again today because now everybody thrifts. And they didn't know the market. Like now I look at resale, especially there's some in here in Mexico, and I'm like, oh, I would never pay that. I know how much it costs. But I just remember at the time, all these women kept coming up to us. We want to go with you to these stores. And we were just like, we don't have the time, but on the bus on the way back from one of these adventures, we really looked at each other and we said, hey, what are they actually asking us? What do they want? What do they need? And really what they're saying is, we want new clothes, but we don't have a lot of money as college students. And we have stuff already that we want to get rid of. So we were like, what if we created a marketplace where they could trade their clothing with each other? And because they're broke, it's not just buying it. It was, let's do a subscription, and they will just get virtual currency for that subscription. And that is what people call cryptocurrency today. So we started with this platform, and this is a great example, a few lessons from this, is that first, just because you're first to market does not mean you're gonna be the most successful. Most first to markets fail. We absolutely failed. Here's why we failed. I was a 19-year-old CEO. One of the best things I did was I hired the right CTO. He built an amazing product. Now, where I failed at hiring all my friends. Yes, do not hire your friends. I mean, sometimes it works, but here's how you can do it better. How you can do it better is that you have to really understand what everyone brings to the business, what they can contribute. So for example, my co-founder, who was my best friend and my roommate at the time, we are spending all of our time together. When you have a co-founder, it is marriage. It is marriage. So we were doing everything together. We were both 19. And on top of that, we're trying to build this thing. She was going through a tragedy with her dad. And we didn't know how to communicate well. So her dad had passed away, and we kept checking in. She wasn't telling me that, I don't think I can do this anymore. And then she's telling me it's good, but then she's not picking up her slack. I started becoming resentful. We just had this really big tiff. And in that entire situation, going to market, what we found was it imploded our relationship. We weren't friends for years. We're now friends now. That's a great thing. I'm the auntie to her daughter. Yeah, part of the partnerships. But the other thing I learned was the communication piece. So if you are finding a co-founder, and I don't believe this thing, if you do a VC-backed company, which my first two companies were VC-backed, there's a lot of investors that want to bet on co-founder teams. They usually do not like solo founders. I don't think that way. I think I'm actually a really good solo founder. I've learned that a lot about myself, but it does help when things get really hard. And if you do have a co-founder, you need to communicate very well. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. Yes.
That is not on the check size,
Yeah.
being a solo founder actually makes sense.
Yes, and that's a whole other tangent I can talk about after this. VC model is crazy. First of all, the financials doesn't make sense. But yes, they are betting on just a few to make it big, like a lot of startups, right? VC funds are startups essentially, but I would challenge that because just because you have a lot of people on your team doesn't mean they know how to execute. I think that there are actually teams now that are smaller that know how to operate. I would say like my generation of entrepreneurs, one of our mistakes and what we were told is if you just have a lot of people on your team, that looks like success. And that is absolutely not true. But it is true that VCs, they are trying to de-risk as much as possible and thinking that if you have multiple co-founders, that means they can share the burden and how hard it's going to be to get there. But I know multiple founders, like my friend Mona Bajor. She got to Series C. She exited the largest fashion wholesale marketplace, and she did it alone. So there are there's definitely examples out there, but I think a lot of VCs just don't. That's how they've done it. They pattern match
But you were saying that you're no longer friend with your partner. What
at that
happened
point.
then? Yeah,
Yeah.
what happened?
We stopped communicating well, and yeah, that imploded the business because she was going through a tragedy. It was hard for her to express to me how hard it was. And I mean, when people are grieving, don't know what's going on. You're just kind of dealing with it. And then I felt resentful because I feel like I'm doing everything. So the great thing about that I learned from that company was that it taught me that what type of CEO I am. I'm the type, and she and I talked about this as well, like a few weeks ago, is that she's like, you're the type that when I see something, and if I say I'm gonna do something, I do it and I make it happen, no matter what. Versus she was just like, I needed to just stop, and she's like, slow down. She's more of a slow burn. She's like, you are full force, like firecracker. Like if I'm going after, I'm gonna get it. So it was just different, and we were young. We were young. But the great thing about that, we're friends now. It taught me that I'm a great visionary. I know how to sell. That's the other thing for founders. The most successful founders to me, you need to know how to sell. And selling is just relationships. And anytime I see a founder that comes to me and they're just like, hey, I'm looking for this investment, and like 60% is going to marketing, and they're like, and I'm hiring a sales team. So I'm like, oh, so you just outsourced your company. You're actually not building this company. Your number one job as founder and CEO is to sell. And so it taught me I was really good at selling. I did my first investor call at 19, and my co-founder was there, and she was like, how did you know what to say? And I was like, I have no idea, I just talked. That was it. So I knew that I was good at the human relations side, which is really good for a founder and CEO. But the great thing about that fail is it led me to my next company. One of my top advisors to this day, he is one of the top black angel investors in the US in Chicago, Tony Wilkins. He was like, hey, I met this one founder. She has this idea, she needs a co-founder. And they are building a fashion tech company, and I think you'd be a great fit. And the cool thing is, there was 3 co-founders, including me. I didn't know them before we got started, and it worked out amazingly well until it didn't. We'll get to there. And that company, we developed technology and matched people with their best fitting designer denim. And then we would tailor it in-house. And then anytime people would reorder, they would reorder and it would always fit them. The reason we were solving this was because online returns were super high. So think of Amazon, a lot of retailers, they waste so much money every year on returns. Like 40 to 50% is getting returned. And not in Mexico, but in the US, there's a lot of free shipping. On paper, we were crushing it. Next lesson that I learned about me, and this is the great thing about doing entrepreneurship for so long, is making sure that you understand what your values are as a human, so when you're building your businesses, that you can align and build your business in that way. So, for example, I do really well as a CEO. In that company, I was CMO, COO. But I do really well when I'm able to be connected to the community and I'm able to talk to people and be on the ground and understand what's working and what's not. Because I believe in co-building with your customer. I think where most founders fail is when they start building stuff and releasing new features or products because they think it's a cool idea. I do not build without the consent of my customer. And the larger that we got, the more way that I felt from our customer. And this happens very often. I was the youngest on our team by 5 and 9 years. And so I just remember we're getting to this place, we're about to get to our Series A, and something just felt off to me. So maybe a few months, 6 months, I kept imagining like, what's next? I want to build the next thing, but I was like, no, we got to get this company to the exit. We got to get to the exit. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to push that away. But my gut was already telling me it's time to do the next thing. It's time to build the next thing. Then I go to visit family in Seattle. I get a random calendar invite from one of my co-founders. And I was like, this is very strange. So when I get back from that trip, I remember getting down to our conference room. I'm usually 10 minutes late. It's not a good thing. Everyone's like, you're going to be really successful, be on time all the time. I'm not always on time. It's not great. So I remember I'm like, I'm here before her. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something in my gut was off. And then I see her walking down the corridor. And behind her is one of the investors on our board. And I just remember they start the conversation and they're like, Alex, you're such a hustler. We want to raise your salary by this much. And then I was just like, okay, first of all, pay me in equity. I don't care about that salary. We're all underpaid anyway, and it's not market rate. Keep that, put it in equity. What's the catch? And they're just like, well, we need you to step down as CMO to make room for gray hairs. And what that meant was, from a optics perspective, as the youngest person on our team, who's a woman of color, we need to bring in a white older guy, or older than me, to make sure we can raise our next round. And the way they tried to soften the blow was, and don't worry, you're still gonna be doing all the things you do now. And I'm like, oh, but we're gonna give someone my title, and they're gonna get all the credit. And I'm like, that's cute. So in true hippie gringo fashion, I went to Burning Man. And it was a investor of ours who I was very close to this investor. So me and one of my co-founders, we were both responsible for probably, she brought in 50% of our capital, I brought in the other 50%. And this one investor was just like, you have to come to Burning Man. I'm bringing a couple of founders. And I was so anti before that. I was just like, I'm not going to shower for how long were we talking about? But then he convinced me. And I end up going, and I just remember I get there, and I'm thinking, because this is my baby. And now I know, like, your companies are not your babies. Do not think of them that way. They are not. I wanted to know what I needed to do next, even though I already knew, but I was so attached to what I was building, and we were about to get to our exit. And so I get to Burning Man, and I'm like, I need to have the answer. So the entire time there, I was trying to rush for the answer. And it was like everything was broken. I mean, I would try to go to some meditation, and like the road there, the sign would be broken. It was like, stop trying to run toward the answer and just sit here and feel it and be present. And it wasn't until the night before our last day, I tried to do my last hurrah. I'm like, I'm gonna get the answer. And I just sat in the middle of Burning Man. I just cried. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. This is my identity. I don't know what I'm gonna do now. And I was just like, I'm just gonna enjoy this. I'm gonna enjoy this last night. And I did. Then the next morning, I'm sitting there with my friend Wade, who's another entrepreneur, and he's talking, and then out of nowhere, I was like, oh my God, I got it. I'm done. And he was just like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm going in next week, and I'm resigning. I'm out. And he was like, what if they gave you $1 million tomorrow? And I was like, Wade, they can give me $1 billion tomorrow, and I would still be gone. And here's what that company taught me about entrepreneurship and values as an entrepreneur. Knowing your values is so important to how you're gonna build companies. Everything I went through in that company was exactly the way it was supposed to be. Exactly. I wouldn't change anything. But it did show me that what I value, and nothing's wrong, whatever you choose to value is up to you. But what I value is making a lot of money is not enough. You can make a lot of money off of a lot of things. There's just so much out there. But how you make money, to me, matters. And also, in terms of when I build companies, who we're serving and how we serve them matters to me. And that's a value for me. So just building a company, for example, they talk about product-led growth. That to me feels icky because it's just saturate the market. Salesforce is a great example of this. I still think it's an awful product. But they made a lot of money. They flooded the market, and it's very hard for you to get out of that system once you're in it. But for me, I really care about how do we co-build with the customer and really deliver on a product or service that they care about and that they value. And it feels good to our team, and it feels good to our customer, and we're doing it the right way, and we're not doing it in insidious ways. So that's what it taught me. And the amazing thing was, like, I was still a co-founder even though I stepped down. It helped to have room for my now company. That company ended up exiting in 2019. But I was able to go out on my own terms. So I got back to the office a week later, and there's a whole different story that I'm not gonna talk about here about how that went down. But I just remember I went in and I said, I'm out, you have 2 weeks, and I will make sure we transition to the team. And yeah, a year later we exited, which was awesome. And then speaking of values, it brought me to my now company, Get Shit Done. And
very cool name.
Thank you so much. So it's funny because whenever I'm in the U.S., it's a very corporate-y, because we work with local governments and corporations now. And whenever it's like someone who's probably 50 plus, and they say, even 40-year-olds, 40 up, they're just like, oh my God, shit. Oh my God. Okay, we're grown. Everyone says get shit done. Go on.
Do you have Burning Man ritual passage also for getting shit done?
Do I have a ritual from Burning Man?
Because Burning Man is a ritual passage for many companies.
Yeah.
Google did it.
Yeah. I don't know if it was necessarily a ritual. I went twice. And I haven't because then the pandemic happened. But I don't necessarily, I learned a lot from it. It also taught me, again, you meet the coolest people there who are all doing great things in the world. And they're not, a lot of people that at least I was surrounded by weren't selling out to me, what selling out looks like. Now my company, what I recognize in terms of, and again, this is why I think context matters. I am the daughter, granddaughter, and niece of community activists. So back home in Washington State, My grandmother was really big in reducing the recidivism rate for Black people and making sure they didn't go get back into prison, because a lot of times if you go to prison, it's really hard to stay out because the system doesn't allow you to get jobs, so people repeat offend because they're trying to survive. And so most of my family is really big in our communities. We were always a central hub to make people feel safe, and they had somewhere to go. And that was embedded into my DNA. And so full circle, I recognized in my journey building companies, I kept hearing about how hard it was for women entrepreneurs. In the US, we kept hearing about 2% of funding goes to women. And they've been saying that since I was raising. I think it actually went down recently last year because the fundraising market is trash right now. But I'm like, we're talking about this so loud, but I think it's a symptom of something that's more systemic, but what is the systemic problem? And I spent thousands of hours with hundreds of women, and what I found was in the US, half of women own half of companies, but only generate about 4% of total revenues. And if we talk about entrepreneurship being a wealth vehicle, we cannot say that's a viable wealth vehicle for women if they only have such a small share and they have 50%. That doesn't make any sense. So my company now, what we do is support women entrepreneurs in growing their businesses through growth programming. We partner with local governments, like the city of New York is one of our largest clients, and we are the operator where we deliver accelerators to women in New York City, and we do it with other cities as well. We're working on doing it with other cities. And the great thing about this is, like, I get to all the lessons I learned from building my last company. So I notice I have to be so close to the customer. I don't care how large we get. I need to be talking to them constantly. I set up calls with the founders in our community a lot, even though I remember I was dating this guy who has like a very successful tech company. He was like, as a CEO, like, you should not let people on your calendar, like, they're peasants or whatever. And I'm just like, we're done. You're a peasant. I'm like, maybe that's how you run your company. I don't run it that way. And I realized community to me, community as a service, and building your company through community is a great way to scale. And now what we're doing is working with different local governments to make sure that we are delivering this programming to make sure that women are able to get to some level of parity. So they increase the revenues in their companies, they generate extra income, better revenues, they can hire, and they can essentially give back to their communities. So full circle, I mean, the lesson from this company, and I'm still learning it, is that how you build your company as a human, because my generation of founders was very hustle, grind, get it done no matter what, work 18, 20 hours a day. That is stupid. Don't do it. It's so stupid. Like the hustle and grind culture, we're seeing the effects of that. In the US, we have a loneliness epidemic. People are burnt out. I moved to Mexico because my nervous system shut down. My therapist, Mexican woman, actually, she was like, your nervous system is shutting down because you have been on overdrive for 10 years. And now you're not able to function. I was having random panic attacks in the streets of New York because I was so overwhelmed, but how I was growing my business. So now I am in this phase of entrepreneurship, really focused on how can I build a company that is human-centered, that honors me as the founder? Because when I honor me, that means I'm honoring my team, they have boundaries, and we can still build badass products, and we're still seeing the benefits of that without having to work 18, 20-hour days.
So you're operating from Mexico to doing business in New York. How hard it is for you?
It works. I mean, the nice thing about now, you can be virtual, right? So I go back and forth, but we're still a New York company.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you miss Seattle? Seattle is a beautiful city.
It's gorgeous. I haven't been there since I was 18. I haven't lived there since I was 18, but I have a lot of family that's still there. So I was just there a couple months ago. It's gorgeous.
Nice. Okay, so thank you very much, Alex. We have some questions from students.
Let's do it.
So let's start with this.
Just a few. I love questions. Give me
Just a
questions.
few.
I love it.
Okay. So what has been the biggest mistake you made when starting your entrepreneurial journey? How do you turn it into a learning experience? You already talked a little bit more about that, but tell us more about that.
I would say outside of what I've mentioned, I would say second guessing myself. So it's interesting. When I was starting my first company at 19, when you're young, you don't have enough experience to know what works and doesn't work. So you're willing to take more risk. You are all in a great place to not overthink things. Just try it. Just try it. The older you get, actually, the more risk averse you become, and you get in your head, because now you can reference, oh my God, I tried that thing. And like, it's kind of like even like with dating, right? Like you're like, I did that, and like, oh my God, I don't want to do that again. It's like, how do we learn from past things and incorporate it into our journey? And so that's what I've learned, is like trusting my gut is the number one way I have successfully grown all my businesses. And when I've gone against it is when I fucked up, because I
Thank you.
overthought it.
Yeah, and this is mine. Talking about trust. How hard is trust in business?
Yeah. Yes. This is, I will say this, nature versus nurture. I think everyone has like feminine and masculine. It doesn't matter if you identify male, female, or whatever. I think women are more socialized to listen to our intuition more and nurture more. And I want more men to be able to tap into that. I would say I didn't have as much of a problem with trust because I just listened. Like when you had a red flag, it was like, this feels off. This doesn't feel good. Whereas I saw some of my male colleagues that were just like, this seems like a good deal. But then they're just like, but that dude seemed kind of weird, you know? But they're like, no, it's a good deal. And I'm just like, you already knew, right? You look back and you're like, well, that didn't feel good. We all have that. And I think there's parts of it where there's just certain things you have to experience to know what to do and not to do. So there's never going to be a perfect way. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to fail, you're going to do all of that. But I think the number one way to build trust is like put yourself out there and figure it out. Just listen to yourself. And sometimes you're not going to get it right, and that's okay.
Good, thank you. Your new company positions itself as a resource for badass female entrepreneurs,
Absolutely.
providing tangible solutions beyond the systematic conversations about the lack of investors. Based on your experience, what are the 2 or 3 most critical strategic or tactical areas where women founders need the most support today to build thriving companies instead of just surviving ones?
That's a great question. I would say this is probably all entrepreneurs, but going back to what I said earlier around selling, every entrepreneur needs to sell. Sell, sell, sell. I have found very often with founders, it's because it's intimate to us. The thing we're building is very, very intimate. And so when we're putting it out there, it's like, oh my God, if you reject my company, you're rejecting me. And so we take it so personally. So I would say getting it out there, talking to people, selling, because I see the funding environment's so interesting. So now you're seeing it shift because it's so hard to raise. And I'm actually very happy about it. Not that it's hard to raise, but that I think it's going to shift the dynamics of how people build businesses, because I think the generation of founders with me, many of them, quite frankly, built Ponzi schemes. Like, it shouldn't take your company 10 years to become profitable. Like, that is a problem. That is not a business. That is a Ponzi scheme. Because what you're doing is just raising more capital to pay off your investors, and then it's not a viable business. So selling, I think your number one focus should be on your customer. Sell to your customer. They are your number one investor. The number one. Not your investors on your cap table, if you choose to do that. The customer, always. I would say the other thing outside of that is learning how to focus. That's what I learned better in my second company. So my first company, I had saw what all the bros were doing, and they're just like, let's just throw things at the wall. I also think that is a stupid piece of advice. I don't believe in that. It's kind of like a food fight where you're in a cafeteria and people are just throwing stuff, and you're throwing stuff, and you're like, but where did it go? Where did it land? You can't measure anything. So it's like, yeah, test things out, but don't just throw things to throw them. And then when you're testing things out, I can tell you where to focus, because then you can measure. We tried that. It worked, it didn't. Here's why it did, here's why it didn't. And then you optimize for growth outcomes. That's the number one thing. So my company has a podcast, and we usually interview women who have all scaled beyond $1 million in revenues. And the number one thing they all do is get sales. They focus on sales, whether you're introvert or extrovert. And they also focus. They get really super focused on one thing in the beginning, not everything. Where I hear founders say things like, we're like in our market, like our competitors are like Amazon. And I'm like, no, they're not. Amazon will eat you for lunch. Like, you are not competing with Amazon. But the great thing about Amazon is when they started with one thing. Do people remember what that was? There we go. They started with books. Yes.
The optimum size of a company for selling it, because I'm under the impression, correct me if I'm wrong, where you get different multiples depending on the size, right? And there's a size where, let's say, institutional money is interested in, and then maybe if you're too small for those big funds, they're not interested in. So what are some of the variables that need to be met in order for you to sell your company?
Okay, I'm going to plug my friend Alexis. She has a Lexi Grant. She has a really great newsletter called They Got Acquired. And there's different math. VC math is stupid math, but it's their math. And I had a VC-backed company. VC math is they want to see at least 3x. At least. That is the minimum. But this is why I believe we have to get out of this idea that every company needs to go after venture capital, because this is how the math works. For a VC fund to be viable, they need to have really large returns. So A16Z is a great example. They're one of the largest funds in Andreessen Horowitz. And most of their money came from a couple of portfolio companies like Instagram or whatnot. And that return was like 90x return. So when a VC, and the way you have to get there as a company, if you're going the venture capital route, this is how the math works. They want you to exit within 5 to 7 years, no more than 10. And they want to see very large returns. Like if you can get to 90x, like multiple, like billions of dollars. Most companies cannot scale that fast. Most companies cannot. Now, what I think is more interesting, and I always joke with my venture capital friends, I have a lot of VC friends, I'm like, I'm more interested in your hotter older brother, which is private equity. Private equity is VC's hotter older brother. It is way more sustainable. You get to a point and you're like, no, I want some stability. I don't want the younger guy that's just gonna be out here doing whatever. No, I want some stability. PE is very interesting because my friend Lexi talks about this. VC math doesn't necessarily make sense. There's not a golden number. They just want to see a really large return. PE, they might be like, we can do 2 to 3x. And they're basing it off of the performance of your business. That's the most important thing. That's how you're going to get an acquisition from PE. Let's go to her first. Private equity. Private equity. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, if you have those questions, please chime in.
Just let me finish with the previous questions.
Great questions, though.
Yes, and then we have the Q&A, okay? So when you first started, what habit or mindset shift completely changed the way you scaled your projects?
When I started?
Yes.
I think it goes back to ignorance. I really was, ignorance is bliss. I think the younger you are, actually, that's your advantage when it's starting, because you don't know what you don't know. I would say now, I actually think back to 19-year-old me, and I ask, what would she do? Not recklessly, but more of how would she show up? It's that I'm not going to second guess myself. So I was very confident. But then as you have more experiences, you start second guessing, like that could go wrong, that can go wrong. And it's good to be able to assess, but sometimes if you overthink something, you won't even get started, you won't do it, and you hesitate. So I would say that was the best mindset, is like, again, trusting your gut, and then as you gain more experience, you continue trusting your gut, but you use the data to make more informed decisions.
Thank you. You mentioned that you lost your sense of purpose when meeting at Fit. Started focusing more on what investors wanted rather than the company's original values. What practical advice would you give to future founders to maintain a healthy balance between meeting investors' expectations and staying true to the mission and values that inspired them to start?
All of my VC friends are like, you're so annoying. because I always tell founders, yes, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your investors, absolutely. But you are the founder of your business. They do not run your business. They put money in your business. And a lot of times, investors are not operators themselves and have never built businesses themselves. My favorite investors are the ones who have actually done it, because usually they don't waste your time and they don't have stupid expectations. What I have found from some VCs is that they are a lot of former investment bankers, come from Wall Street or whatever, and they're trying to approach a startup the way they would a Fortune 500 company. And they're like, we need these numbers and these projections. I'm like, that's all bullshit. Like, all of this is BS, you know? At the end of the day, when you have investors, understand that you are in the driver's seat. It is your business, and say, I will take that into consideration. They are your partners, but they are not running your ship, and do not let them run your ship, because they usually run it into the ground.
Thank you. Alex, people often talk about doing more with less, but you advocate for building sustainable business without failing into the trap of hostile culture. What concrete strategy do you recommend for growing ambitiously without sacrificing personal well-being or long-term vision?
Yeah, great question. Again, I think this goes back to like knowing what your vision is and what your values are. Like, what is it that I would say in my last company, what me and my co-founders did really well in the beginning, and I wish we would have kept doing, was we would check in, we would go have drinks together and say, okay, based on where we are in the business today and where we're trying to go, what we all agreed on success looks like to us, how does it feel for each of us right now? What's working and what's not? And this is, again, you are married to your co-founders. I remember one of my co-founders got married, and I spent more time with her than her husband. Like, I was like, that's pretty much my wife at this point, you know? And so I think for us, it was allowing us to do those check-ins, allowed us to benchmark at each part of our journey to say, are we going in the direction we'd like, and are we doing it the way that feels good to us? And on top of that, where do we each feel best inclined to be inserted into this business? Because as businesses grow, it's okay for you to evolve and change too. And if you're doing life right, hopefully you are evolving and changing and growing. And that only happens from reflection. And so what I found is, for example, really early on, I realized I am a visionary, I am a builder, I can grow. I do not want to maintain. I am bored at maintenance stage. No, thank you. Like, boring. So, for example, I would never, like, for example, I realized in my last company, I'm like, if this ever got to an IPO, I would be out. I don't want to run an IPO'd company. That would be boring to me, because there's so many restrictions and rules at that point. Whereas when you're growing and you're starting and you're just getting it to as big as you can get it or wherever you want it to go, there's so much uncertainty, and you get to test and be creative. That's where I thrive. And I know that not everyone does. Like, my mom, she's an attorney. She does not do well in gray area. She's like, it's black or white. And I remember even when I told her, I was like, in school, I thought I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I was like, Mom, I'm not going to be a doctor. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to figure it out. And she was like, Alex, we need more black doctors and lawyers. But it was because that's what I think most cultures are told. Like, at least in the black culture, it's like, you are a doctor, you're a lawyer, or you're an athlete, right? And I was just like, I'm not going to do any of those things. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go after this. And my mom was terrified, because she was like, what about your 401k? What? Like, even when we were raising money, we had raised millions of dollars, and my mom still was like, why did they give you money? Like, I don't understand why these people gave you money. So I think at the end of the day, it's like, to stay true is really about, yeah, just checking in on like what matters to you, and building sustainably is really about like, where do you feel most alive in the business? And that can evolve too. So I know now, like a CEO, I need space to think, and I also need time to just talk to people. And it doesn't need to be anything like I have to close the deal. Sometimes I just get the best deals done because I just talked to someone who's like, hey, actually, you should meet my friend. And then that turned into like a 6-figure deal that I didn't know, because I had time to talk to my community and my network. So it just depends on, like, at the end of the day, what makes you feel alive as a founder and a CEO, and where you execute best. That's going to be your zone of genius, and you should always stay in that zone because that helps to sustain your business.
And talking about that, I have a good question here. How do you find motivation in your everyday life?
How do I find motivation? Okay, I'm gonna give a very real answer because I feel like I hate toxic positivity. There's just like, what's the, even though I know he's kind of canceled right now, but Drake, he has in God's plan where he's like, sometimes I feel good and sometimes I don't. Like, I think we need to normalize this. We need to normalize that some days you are not gonna feel motivated. Like, I hate people that get on YouTube or TikTok and they're just like, and you just gotta hype yourself up and pump yourself up and just like go on a run at 4 a.m. Like, you're not waking me up at 4 a.m. Like, I won't even take meetings before 10 a.m. unless it's a lot of money. You know, like, outside of that, you're not getting on my calendar before 10 a.m. That's how I work. And I try to do slow morning to myself. So I think in terms of motivation, it's like, how are you best designed? So even the way I do my calendar is I block off things on my calendar that aren't just business, it's me stuff. So I know that no one can get on my calendar if it's like, this is my bachata night, or this is my pickleball day, or this is whatever. Like, that is just as important as the meeting I'm having with that Fortune 500 company. I am more important than that because I'm the one that has to get the deal done. So the way that I stay motivated is really about listening to internally what I'm saying I need. And a lot of times your body's already telling you that. Like, you already know if you're pushing past that point. So, like, I usually don't try to give, like, tactics on that because everyone has their own thing. Like, sometimes I have a dance party and after a meeting in my house, you know, and my neighbors might hate it, but it's okay. We all blast our music.
Yeah. And what is the best piece of advice you will give to your younger self?
Oh, my God. So my friend here, Jari, knows this. So every year, Selena, Dreaming of You, I sing Dreaming of You to myself. So I love taking love songs and making it about me because I'm like, I'm my greatest love. But Selena's Dreaming of You is like a tribute every year. So my birthday was last month, and I was in Puerto Vallarta and I went to this karaoke bar and I sang it to myself. I went by myself and I sang it to myself and I made friends. But I sing this song to her every year because it's a tribute to saying, like, I'm dreaming of my younger self, dreaming of you, because she's the one that gave me my dreams. And it's a tribute to her every year to say thank you for giving me my dreams. And also, like, I don't even think that, I think sometimes we say, like, what would we say to our younger self? I think more times than not, we need to flip that. And as adults, say, what would my younger self say to me? So I challenge that because I think so often where we can get the most motivation is if we actually listen to what our younger self would want from us.
That's great. What has been the greatest challenge you've encountered in trying to close wealth and equity gaps for underestimated entrepreneurs? And how do you overcome it?
Oh my God. People are very weird about acknowledging privilege. It is so weird. I don't know what it is. Like, you go into rooms and people, like, especially in the US, like, if you tell people, well, like, you have white privilege, white people are like, what? And it's just like, why are you so scared of having privilege? I don't understand what the problem is. So something I try to tell people is like,
to be thankful.
Yeah. It's like when you do not acknowledge your privilege, you weaponize it, period. And so for me, when I think of as a Black woman, so there's definitely things that were very hard for me to get done, but I also say when I speak very publicly, I am a biracial Black woman. I am light-skinned, and I went to the moment, even though I didn't come from money, I went to a very fancy school. I remember I would raise capital, and investors, as soon as I said what school I went to, they were just like, oh. And I'm just like, fuck you, that's gross. Like, now I'm consumable for you. So I would say the way we bridge those gaps is like when we each can very much so acknowledge we all have privileges, and when you can acknowledge that, you know how to leverage that privilege for yourself and for other people. And everything, and I think that we're seeing this right now in the world, but especially the US,
people are angry because there's such a huge divide between the haves and have-nots. And we have convinced ourselves that the way we're going to get there is this: if I'm the exception to the rule, if I become the billionaire or the whatever, then I can help everybody else. Humans don't work that way. Trickle-down economics does not work. And I went to a school that's all about econ, and I dropped out of econ after a week because I'm like, this does not work. Humans don't work that way. So I would say that's the one way to bridge the gap, but also when we can focus on what is in our control as well, what is it that we can solve and bring to the market that we uniquely can solve and add value. I think that's the way we can get there, and then making sure that we look at how can we give that back to our communities versus looking at how we can add more billions to our own account.
Thank you. Last one before Q&A, okay? So, Alex, what was the key moment that revealed the true potential of your current approach? And what concrete decision did you make to turn that vision into tangible action, even in the face of uncertainty or initial setbacks?
So this current company. Is that the question for this current company? I think, I think it was more of what I had personally experienced in my last company, the good and the not so great, like almost getting pushed out, where it's like, this is mine. How are we in this? How are we in this place? Like, there's this mentality of, example, a lot of companies that go and IPO, the founders walk away, like the DoorDash guys, that's not big here, but in the US, they're kind of like Grubhub or like these DDs or whatever of the world, delivery services. And they walked away, I think, with like 4% of their own business. And you hear people say, well, that's 4% of like billions of dollars. And I'm like, but it's still the principle. How do you're a slave in your own company. You did that. You and your team did that. Your shareholders that literally did nothing but write a check got the majority of your shares. That doesn't make any sense. So for me, it was more of like a fire in my belly of learning that we need to, knowing what it looks like on the different sides. I had bootstrapped, I had done the VC route, I had seen the different models. It was looking at whatever route you choose, there's not a wrong path. The wrong path is the one that does not align with your vision and your values. That is it. And so it was more of like a fire in my belly of saying, we need to teach more entrepreneurs that you can build a business on your own terms instead of being like, I need to do it this way because Jeff Bezos did it or this person did it. And I'm like, well, what about that person that built a multi-million-dollar company that's pretty amazing that you don't hear about because they don't have the fancy article in Forbes? And those are just as important. And those are just as amazing in building wealth. Having a multi-million-dollar company is pretty badass. And the majority of companies are not going to be billion-dollar companies. The reality is like, it's just not happening. I don't think the market and the planet doesn't have more room for it, but we do have room for this middle that I think is very worthy, that is overlooked, but a lot of people don't hear the stories about how to get there.
Thank you, Alex. So, Nico, you want to start with a question?
Yeah.
From the private equity standpoint, like there has to be a size, right? Because I imagine these big funds, it takes the same time to look at a $500,000 company to a 5 million, let's say. So what is kind of the sweet spot where you get like the most leverage, like the most bang for your buck when selling the company?
If you're looking at just private equity, they're looking at, is this a cash producing company? Is it profitable? That's why it's different than VC. VC's like, just go really big. Like when Uber IPO'd or whatever, I don't think, they became profitable maybe a year ago or two. They'd been in market for 15 years. That's insane. So private equity is interesting because they have different incentives. Because a private equity deal could be, we are going to acquire this company and we can put operators in place that we know can take this cash producing company that's already doing well and take it to the next level. Or they might say, it might be a smaller company that's maybe in the 6 figures, but it's a bundle deal. They're trying to acquire that asset because they're trying to make it an extension of an existing company. So, example, Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call it, is not an innovative company. They just literally steal ideas from people and acquire. It's a great approach for him. He's doing very well. Their stock is great right now. But that's the approach PE takes.
Apple did the same.
And Apple did the same. It is much more expensive sometimes if you don't have the experts to build it versus acquiring it. And private equity is amazing at acquiring it. So there's not necessarily a sweet spot. It just depends on what they are trying to achieve with their current portfolio.
Nico, can we continue this conversation afterward?
You can come to me after.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have one more question for
Yes.
you. First of all, thank you for being here and tell us your experience. And you repeat a lot that one of the most important things for you is to be close to your client and to like know them. But how do you do it? Like, because sometimes we think we know our clients and we know that what they want, but like sometimes we just look the answer we think we have. I don't know if I can explain, but
That makes sense.
for you, like how do you get close to your clients?
Yeah. I think what's hard is that, and great question, is that we're told, like, put out a survey or whatever it is. Surveys are a good way in, but they don't give you nuance. I'll give an example of this. When I was, before Get Shit Done even came about, I was like, I feel there's a problem here, but I need to understand. If I would have just done surveys and asked women, what is your biggest challenge in growing your business? 9 out of 10 times they would say capital. The reason they were saying capital is because whenever they were reading Forbes or whatever article out there, what they were seeing as success is how much money you raised in your business at the time. So they would say, I need capital. But instead, I was on phone calls with people. So when they would say, I need capital, I would ask, what does capital mean to you? 9 out of 10 times, they would say, I need more income and I need more revenues in this business. That's not capital. But a lot of entrepreneurs conflate the two because that's what we're seeing as success is you just go out and raise, again, a Ponzi scheme, is you go out and you just raise this money, and we're not talking about how is this a viable business, but what these women were actually saying is, I need money in my bank account. That capital is an accelerant. It is not meant to cushion your bank account. And so I say that because it was literally getting on calls, and I still do it to this day. I prioritize it. I have founders in our community today that booked a few calls with me. I have set times, and I'm just asking them, what's going on in your business right now? What's working, what's not? Because then when we're working with like the city of New York, and they're asking us, well, what do founders need to grow? And I'm like, great, here's what they're telling us. And it's going to change at every point. Like what they needed a year ago is now completely different because everyone's so overwhelmed by what's happening in the world. Now we're hearing founders saying, I don't just need the tactical stuff. I also need mental help right now. So how do we meet them where they're at? So I say that because getting on a call, talk to them. Don't just do a survey and make it a part of your routine. Checking in with them. I have like weekly calls with some clients. We do check-ins. Sometimes it gets personal where we're texting each other or whatnot. But I think sometimes when we think about scale, people are trying to put too many systems in place, and we forget like the human connection is not scalable.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions?
I have the question in my cell phone. As entrepreneurs, we often hear about resilience and adaptability, but what practical strategies have helped you to keep moving forward when the path wasn't clear, or how you found this internal force or to keep moving when you can't? Yeah.
Yeah, no, great question. this is another trope in the entrepreneurship community that you might learn in school, but I am not anti, but I don't love it. You'll hear about like the hero's journey. The hero's journey does not make any sense to me, because what it does is it creates this very isolating experience for entrepreneurs, because it's like you start here and then you're going to meet a guide and then you go here, and none of it works that way. Like, one of my favorite rappers, Nipsey Hussle, he says, when I say self-made, meaning I designed myself. People love to say, like, I bootstrapped, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, I did it on my own. And I don't know if some of you know the podcast, How I Built This. Yes. So one of my favorite questions he asked entrepreneurs at the end is like, I don't know if they still do it, but how much of your journey do you think was luck versus hard work? And depending on who they ask that question to, women and people of color are just like, luck, what are you talking about? Whereas like I hear a lot of like, especially white men are like, oh my God, there, so much luck or whatever it is. And so I say this because I think about my journey, and the moments I actually made it harder for myself is when I tried to do it by myself. And thinking, and especially people in general, but especially women, are socialized to be strong, don't complain, do it all. And I see a lot of women entrepreneurs not doing what our male counterparts are doing. Like, the golf course is basically a guy's like club to just go talk and get a deal done. And they're saying, here's what I need, here's what I don't need. Do you know someone? A lot of times it's not even about golf. So it's like, how do we leverage our communities and our networks to make sure we're getting what we need? Because you're not gonna do it on your own. Like, the hero's journey is a fallacy. Every step of the way, there's someone that can help you. So if you're like, right now I need to meet someone that does this, ask your network. Like, every single day I'm asking someone for help for something. Something that you can actually do that I do on the end of calls now, my friend Tiffany Dufu, she sold her company last year, now she's at Tory Burch, and she told our community, she was like, when someone asks you where you need support, you should always have an answer to that question. And some people are like, I don't know. Like, the way I start my weeks is like, if someone asks me what are one or two things they can help me with this week, I will have one or two answers to that. So that's one way you can start, and also challenging yourself to ask for help when you need it as well, versus waiting. Yeah, that's resilience.
Bottom line, build a network.
Build a community.
You're right.
Community is your network,
Right.
yes.
Okay. In the meantime, I have another question. If it's not Mexico or U.S., in which country you will be doing business?
Oh my God, it's so funny. I'm actually about to hire someone a really big, a big accelerator program, Mass Challenge out of Boston. She was responsible for basically their international stuff. And she was like, we should be going to different places. So she was talking about like, we should be in Japan. Like someone reached out to us earlier this year about being in Japan. Then she was like, what about Pakistan and things like that. So I think as a gringo and seeing all the chaos in the U.S. right now, every country outside of the U.S. should be capitalizing the hell out of this moment. We look like complete fools, and the international markets are shifting to other places because they're like, it is such a wild card in the U.S. Places like Mexico, places like Japan, places like China, you are all gonna thrive so much. This idea that you have to go to the US to build a successful company, absolutely not. You should stay here and take advantage of everybody who wants to get the hell out of the US. So this is a great opportunity for Mexico and building your innovations here at home.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you very much, Alex, for all of your experience. What would be the things most important to listen? What are the most important things to listen from customers, from business?
What is the most important thing to listen to?
Yes, from customers.
From customers. I don't think there's good question. I don't think there's one thing. I think it's nice if you have like a baseline questions like 5 to 10 when you're talking to them. But like keep it open-ended, because then you can hear like what are truly like your challenges. So some of the questions I tell founders is like, when you're doing a check-in, saying like, what's working right now? What's not working? And if you had a magic wand, what would you like to, how would it be fixed if you had a magic wand? Even if it's those 3 things. And when you keep it open enough, you hear from your customers what it is that their needs are versus, I think sometimes we create questions that are guiding them to what we want to hear versus it needs to be full enough. Because there's some things where I realized there's some things we rolled out earlier this year that I would have never thought we rolled out, but it was because our customers were like, we want this thing right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, we need to pivot away from what we were about to build to this thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Question?
Hi, Alex. I'm Diana. Thank you so much. You inspire me a lot with your story. My question is, what lessons have you learned about leadership, and what practices have helped you build strong teams that thrive?
Great question. I think especially now, it's the human aspect more than anything. I think the best teams now are going to honor the humanity of everybody on their team. So being done with this, like, just work a lot of hours to work a lot of hours, like, I truly hate, this is a strong word, but I do not like it because it's exploitative, when companies say, we're a team, like, no, not a team, we're a family. You are not my family. I have family and I have friends. We work together. And maybe we might be friends, right? But a lot of startups, especially my generation of founders, use the family coining to exploit people, to work longer hours, to use that emotional appeal, and without paying them more, without doing certain things, that this is still a job. It is a job. So as a leader now, like, I check in with our team to be like, what is it that you need? What's working? What's not? You see, and it's also my job as a leader to tune in to say, it seems like their energy's a little low today. Let me check in with them. What's going on? And I'll text my team, like, what's going on? And sometimes they're like, someone on my team today was just like, I'm feeling really stressed because my husband just lost his job. One of our vendors was late on invoicing or paying our invoice. And so I was like, bet, let me make sure I'm pushing them. And I needed to tell their team. And they were like, oh, yes. Because I was like, look, it's my job as a leader to take care of my staff. So I get your invoicing departments behind, but people still need to eat, and I need to pay my team. So how can we make this right? And they expedited it. But that's my job. And it's because I'm checking in with them and saying, are you okay? And the great thing about this is when you take that level of humanity to your teams, you get way more out of them. People will go above and beyond. Like, there's things my team does that I don't even have to ask them because they feel safe and they feel understood and they feel like I have their back, because I do. And then in return, they have my back without me having to punish them or keep following up with them. So just be a human, honestly. How would you treat your friend, basically? But they're not your friend, they're your team.
Yes. No psychological torture.
Yes, don't do that.
Jamil?
Hi, I'm Yamil. I wanted to ask you, how do you work on your mental health? Because for me, it hasn't been as easy as usually entrepreneurs say. So, I got interested in your story, and I think it's not as easy as saying, "Oh, I have mental health issues. I'm going to change my country." Mm-hmm. It's not by that way. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, great question. Also, all those people saying that are lying. They're lying because they're probably trying to sell you their coaching program. That's usually like, everyone's like, look how happy I am all the time. And it's just like, you're also trying to sell me something. Every founder I know struggles with mental health. So I think we are 30% more likely to be depressed than the average population. And be anxious. And it's very real because there's so much responsibility put on us. I think everyone, and this goes back to how do you want to build and what makes you feel joyful. So what I realized for me, so coming here from New York, my therapist was like, you need to reset your nervous system. So one thing I do is therapy. That's not for everybody, but therapy has been very helpful for me. But I also realize being in my body is very important. So I have been a dancer since I was younger. So when I first got here, I was dancing every day. I would go do salsa, bachata, zouk, something. That helped me. Now I do things like pickleball, anything where I can move my body. Even if it's like, I don't need to go out of my house. I'm gonna just, after lunch, I'm gonna have a 10-minute dance break in my living room, before my next meeting. And so I think it's more about taking inventory for yourself to say, here's the things that make me feel most joyful, and I'm gonna make sure I insert that into my day, so then I am not at a deficit, because I think when you're building, it's so easy to take away from yourself, because you're just focused on that. Sometimes it's calling a friend. So for example, I do terrace talks at my place. I have friends come over, and they'll bring a bottle of mezcal, and I'll have some beers, and we just listen to music and talk. And that afterwards I feel really happy. Or going to a dance party with my friends, going on a walk with a friend. It doesn't have to be something you spend money on either. I think it's more of, you have to take inventory of, when do I feel the happiest? And sometimes it's really small. It's like, I just need a hug from my mom, or I need to talk to my mom, or I need to talk to my best friend. And making sure that you're doing that as often as possible versus just focusing on your business. So everyone's mental health journey is so different, and sometimes you need a specialist, and sometimes it's just like, I'm not doing enough to make myself happy, and I'm putting too much into this business. That's why I tell people, your businesses are not your babies, they are things you create. Do not let it take over your life. Do not.
Business not your babies, and the workers are not family.
Yes.
Right. Eric. Sí, y luego acá. Ujú.
Hey, thank you. I have two questions. The first one is based on what you just said about how you treat your team, and how being a leader and treat them with humanity and being empathetic, and sometimes taking care of things for them when they need an extra help. I have a question regarding that, because I think I like to be like that, but I also struggle to let people go sometimes. Yeah. And that's a real question that I have, like, how and when you know that it's time to let someone go, and how would you manage to do it in the most sensitive way, let's say?
This is so funny. So you all can talk to him later, but this is my friend Jari. I'm on the board of his. He has a mezcal company. And we were talking about this the other day. He has to let someone go. And he was like, he has a pretty big team now, but he was like, they're not performing the way they need to perform. But it's really hard when you're a founder, because when people start with you so early, it feels like a compliment. People took a big risk on you to be there. That's why it's harder to let them go. Because you're like, I really honor you for being here. And I have a love-hate relationship with the saying from Warren Buffett, where he says, what got you here won't get you there. It's a yes and for me. I do think things like values and passion and being kind and having integrity, those things will always get you there. Always. Never let go of those things. But I do think that there's people at certain points of your business that were meant to be on one side of the journey with you, and then they're not meant to go to the next. And also sometimes we're thinking, if we keep them, that we're doing them a service. A lot of times they're feeling it too. So when we are letting them go, it makes room for them to go and do the next thing. And sometimes it's like, hey, maybe it's, like I try to do check-ins with my team, like, what are the things that you want to do? And then if it's, well, what do you want to do now? Maybe their exit interview, what do you want to do now? And then you can say, if I know someone, I will try to make that connection. But I believe this in most relationships. I don't think every relationship is supposed to last. It's not. Romantic, friends, teammates. Some people are there for a season, and it doesn't diminish how important they were. It just means that they're not meant to be there the entire time.
That's a great question, because sometimes I struggle with that, mostly when it comes to letting them go. And when I made my mind, sometimes I have no touch to approach. I just tell them, hey, it's not working, please just it's over. So
Yeah.
having this answer, it's actually kind of cool because then I can focus on what they really want at that point. Because I like to do that on the journey, like this first part of the journey, I focus on what they want. And at the end, it's kind of hard for me to connect there because I'm focusing on the business needs. So it's kind
Yeah.
of crazy. The other question I have is something. I like to think that I don't struggle with it so much, but it would be very naive of me not to accept that sometimes I struggle with my ego. Obviously, when you're at the,
Everyone does.
yeah. But me being at the front of the business that I have right now, and sometimes it's easier to look at the success you have rather than the mistakes you've had. I try not to do that, but at the end of the day, sometimes it wins. And fighting with the ego, how you manage that? Like fighting with the over committing with the part that it's always like, yeah, I'm successful, I'm doing it.
Give me an example.
For example, I have this client. He's a client from the U.S. I accidentally fell in the e-waste recycling business, and I represent this company. They're in the U.S. and I manage a ton of their operations here in Mexico and some places in Latam. So in Mexico, I have a ton of partners. I literally can just pick up the phone and things will get done. That's basically how it works. I've been just a small time here in this business. I've been 5 years in the business, but it's good. I have good relationships and lasting relationships that I can call anyone and they will help me out. I found out that doing this in, for example, Costa Rica, it worked. I called people in Costa Rica and they picked up, and I don't even meet him in person. They know me by phone, and every single time I pick up the phone, they answer and they get things done, get shit done. And this kept happening till I found out a project in Puerto Rico, actually, and things went sideways. I picked up the phone, and I'm trying to always be honest with my client, obviously. He's not only my client, he's also a friend and partner at this point. And the fight of telling him like, hey,
What went wrong?
I fucked up. Like
Okay, yeah.
that I cannot make it shorter. It's like, hey, dude, I
You fucked up.
It's
Okay.
literally really hard because I'm focusing on, hey, I've been doing this. My history tells me that I can manage, that I can always deliver. And right now that I'm not delivering as promised, it's getting hard to say, hey,
Yeah.
I screwed up.
Yeah, you're not a robot though. So you're not going to be perfect every time. Even ChatGPT is not perfect all the time.
Right.
So I would just say quickly to that, integrity is knowing your values. Integrity to me is one of my top values. I'm very big about being honest. Example, my last company, we were doing a tech update to our back end. That changed the calculation on how we charged customers. A pair of jeans that was $250 became $25,000. Yeah. That tech glitch, it hit 3 of our customers. And our tech team caught it, but we had already charged them. But we were like, oh my goodness. So as one of the founders, I was like, I'm calling all of these customers. So me and my co-founder called them to say, hey, we fucked up. This is what happened. And the reality is that no one was mad at us. That was crazy. Even though $25,000, we put it back on their cards, right? But $25,000, like one of the guys was just like, no wonder my wife couldn't get groceries today at the store. And he laughed about it. But it was because we owned it and said, hey, here's what happened. We apologize, and here's how we're going to make it right. And not only did we have those customers, they stayed customers with us.
Good, thank you. We have only 2 more questions first, and then you.
Got it.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Natalie, and my question is, much of the traditional business world was built by and for a male-centric model. In what ways do you see your entrepreneurship not just as building a company, but also as an act of rewriting to history? And how does a female leader looks like to you?
Great question. I think for a really long time, we have told women that a great example of this is Elizabeth Holmes, the chick that went to prison. There's so many founders in prison. This is why you don't build Ponzi schemes, because you will go to prison. There's a lot of founders in prison right now. FTX, Charlie, all of these things. But you see a lot of these founders because they're looking at a playbook of what they saw worked. When you don't see as many women leaders, a lot of times we're looking at, well, what has been the model that worked? And it's usually men, right? And I think we can learn a lot from our male counterparts. I have a lot of male advisors that I call, and I'm like, what would you do in this situation? Because they are at the tables, right? However, I think the advantage in any leader, no matter who they are, is leading based on who you are and how you would want to be led, right? So I think one of the fallacies is we tell women, you are supposed to be a man. Like Elizabeth Holmes did this, where she dropped the octaves in her voice to sound deeper. And she was, in her head, rewarded by it, because people were like, well, she was showing up more masculine, versus like, no, people just believed in your vision. You can have a high-pitched voice, but if you have a great product. So I think at the end of the day, I think the way we rewrite the script is if we show up very authentically as who we are as individuals, and we lead from that versus trying to be someone else. That's the biggest thing. And that's for men and women.
Thank you. Last question, please.
Nos pidieron, so there's the issue is that our productions team has been.
They have to go home.
They've been working since 6 in the morning because
Yes, go home.
Okay.
But we usually have ask our visitors to do a little one-on-one or group to one. We're going to move it to Rio. Alex and Jare, we'll talk over dinner later. But I hope to see, I know that this won't be the last time you speak to us. Everybody, thank you all for your participation. The questions were really, really good.
Really good.
I saw a lot of ChatGPT work there. Well used. But anyway, thank you so much. And Alex, thank you so much. Entonces vamos a darle unos aplausos, por favor, con mucho cariño.